Our headlines today. And the UK's response to the economic impact of the Iran war. The Prime Minister will lead an emergency meeting of top ministers and officials to discuss the options.
It comes as fuel prices continue to rise. Petrol now more than 10% higher since the conflict began. I'll look at what more ministers could do to protect people here.
President Trump's deadline for Iran to open the crucial Strait of Hormuz will pass later this evening. Tehran remains defiant.
Also this morning, a suspected arson attack on ambulances belonging to a Jewish community ambulance trust in North London. The police are treating it as an anti-Semitic hate crime.
I'm here in the heart of London's Jewish community in northwest London as many wake up this morning as police are investigating an anti-Semitic hate crime.
As we've been hearing, an investigation's been launched after 4 ambulances were set on fire in Golders Green in the early hours of this morning. The vehicles belong to a Jewish community ambulance service. Police say the arson attack's being treated as an anti-Semitic hate crime. Nearby houses were evacuated as a precaution and road closures remain in place, although the fires are now out. No injuries have been reported.
Tonight at 6, President Trump halts plans to attack Iran's power plants after what he calls productive talks on ending the war.
They called. I didn't call. They called. They want to make a deal. And we are very willing to make a deal. It's got to be a good deal. And it's got to be no more wars, no more nuclear weapons.
But as Iran continues to be hit by Israeli strikes and fires back at Gulf states, Iran denies any negotiations. It's not clear who the Americans have been talking to. In London, police hunt 3 suspects after an arson attack on ambulances belonging to a Jewish charity. It's being treated as an anti-Semitic hate crime. An emergency government meeting tonight in Downing Street. The Governor of the Bank of England is there to discuss how to handle the economic impact of the war on the UK.
For Parliament Speaker branding it fake news to manipulate the markets. And oil prices ease after President Trump pledges to pause the attacks on Iran's energy infrastructure. Police search for 3 suspects after 4 Jewish charity ambulances were set on fire in London in what Sir Keir Starmer has called a horrific anti-Semitic attack.
An urgent question is whether the Strait of Hormuz may soon reopen. Attacks on oil tankers have disrupted much of the global economy. And Trump even suggested this critical waterway could be carved up between him and some unnamed Iranian leader.
Be jointly controlled.
By who?
Maybe me. Maybe me.
You want the United States to be
Me and the Ayatollah, whoever the Ayatollah is, whoever the next Ayatollah.
But all of this talk may amount to very little. Iran has shown it is still firing drones across the region. Faster even than US strike aircraft can hit the launch sites. But is there a faction within the Iranian leadership talking to the White House? One powerful regime figure, Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf, seen here meeting with President Putin, has denied any dialogue with the Americans, saying Trump is lying to manipulate the financial and oil markets. The Iranians are openly trolling the president.
Hey Trump, you are fired. You are familiar with this sentence. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
And while Trump is talking of a possible breakthrough, Revolutionary Guards are putting Trump posters on missiles still being fired at Israel and Gulf countries. A sign of how wildly unpredictable this conflict remains. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
Well, our international editor Emma Murphy is in Beirut in Lebanon. This is all a bit of a mystery, isn't it, Emma? What have you heard from your contacts there, your sources, about these so-called talks?
I've been talking to various people in the region in the last hour or so, trying to follow up on exactly what it is that President Trump is saying. And what's notable is that the sources that I've spoken to are very clear. The first attempt to make contact was not the Iranians, it was the Americans reaching out through trusted contacts, potentially in Egypt, Turkey and Pakistan, and maybe also other nations, in order to try and broach a conversation with the Iranians, to try and find some level of common ground for discussion to try and alleviate the situation that we're seeing across this region. And I would imagine driven also by an attempt to alleviate the financial crisis that this is all triggering. I understand that President Trump was interested in speaking with the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammad Khalibaf, and potentially his point of contact was the Iranian Foreign Minister. Now, this would suggest that the Americans are reaching out because they don't feel they've got a lot of other options. And I think the position from Iran would be, well, this is excellent for us because we've withstood what you've thrown at us and now you're coming back to us to ask for our help. And I think that will embolden their position without question. And this whole narrative fits with stuff we've been hearing over the last few days, that there is a real sense of uncertainty amongst Western and regional diplomats who are dealing with this about the veracity of the intelligence that the Americans are putting forward, that there's real concern that they are not being as transparent or honest. Now, of course, overselling your achievements is nothing new in war, but what we're hearing from those sources is that there's a real concern that what's not being said is how long this war could go on, how long the Americans fear it might go on for, and that, of course, has huge human consequences and also very significant economic ones.
Emma Murphy in Beirut, thank you. Well, here the Prime Minister is holding an emergency Cobra meeting tonight to discuss the impact of the Iran war on Britain's cost of living crisis. Among the measures being looked at is help for some households with energy bills. Earlier, Sir Keir Starmer told a committee of MPs that we have to plan on the basis that the conflict will not end soon. From Westminster, here's our political editor, Robert Peston.
The worst shock to oil and gas supplies in history caused by Trump's Iran war, putting up petrol prices for drivers and mortgage rates, and potentially food prices too. So how long does he think the pain will last?
Since the conflict started, I've been really clear with the team that we mustn't fall in to the sort of false comfort of thinking that there will necessarily be a quick and early end to this.
And if he has to help us out with our energy bills, when will that happen?
We're both looking at the end of June, but also looking ahead to the September-October position as well, which is when the energy percentage of energy being used goes up considerably for very obvious reasons.
As you're dealing with President Trump, who does make some quite rude comments about the UK one day and sometimes is supportive of the UK, you're dealing, it seems like, different presidents on different days of the week.
A lot of what is said or done is undoubtedly said and done to put pressure on me. I have no doubt about that. I understand exactly what is going on, but I'm not going to be wavering on this. I'm the British Prime Minister, and my job is to be absolutely focused on what's in the British national interest.
Costs for all of us have been rising sharply since the war started. The price of natural gas on wholesale markets is up more than 80%. Petrol is 14 pence pricier per litre, and the interest rates for a 2-year fixed-rate mortgage have gone from 4.8% to almost 5.4%.
It's fear of the unknown again, so there's a war going on that we seem to be getting more and more involved in. Interest rates are spiking upwards, so people are worried that they might not be able to afford their monthly payments or that they might not be able to move if that was their plan.
That pernicious uncertainty is hurting farmers too.
Our energy costs, our labour costs, and now our fuel and fertiliser costs are really having a big impact, which unfortunately will have a knock-on impact with the food that we're selling in people's supermarkets. But the longer the war goes on, for across the country, the bigger the worry is for farmers, and obviously the more it costs.
So the Prime Minister this afternoon convened a meeting of the Emergency Cobra Committee, consisting of ministers and, unusually, the Governor of the Bank of England, to make plans to protect the most vulnerable farmers, businesses and families from soaring costs, though these are still largely plans, not actions. Robert Peston, ITV News.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. President Trump says he has ordered the US military to postpone plans to attack Iran's power plants and energy infrastructure for 5 days after what he says are major points of agreement with Iran about ending the war. But Iran has denied such talks have taken place. Donald Trump issued the ultimatum to Iran on Saturday, saying that he would obliterate its power plants unless Iran reopened the crucial shipping channel, the Strait of Hormuz, by midnight tonight. Here's Gary O'Donoghue.
As the war enters its fourth week, there's been no let-up on the bombing of Iran. These are the latest pictures released by the US, striking what the Pentagon describes as military targets. But now from the president, a whole new tone of optimism. Iran, he says, is engaging in productive conversations and that nothing less than a complete and total resolution of hostilities is on the table.
They want very much to make a deal. We'd like to make a deal too. We're going to get together today. By probably phone, because it's very hard to find a country. It's very hard for them to get out, I guess. But we'll at some point very, very soon meet. We're doing a 5-day period. We'll see how that goes. And if it goes well, we're going to end up with settling this. Otherwise, we'll just keep bombing our little hearts out.
But no sooner had the president raised the possibility of a resolution of the war than Iran rejected the idea. A statement from the Foreign Ministry said, "We deny what US President Donald Trump said regarding negotiations taking place between the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran adheres to its positions, rejecting any type of negotiations before achieving Iran's goals from the war." Over the weekend, the president had given Iran a 48-hour deadline to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the crucial waterway which carries 20% of the world's oil supplies and which has remained largely closed, sending global energy prices rocketing and building pressure on the president at home. He'd also threatened to strike Iran's energy infrastructure, such as the Bushehr nuclear plant, the country's biggest, and that just 2 days after telling Israel to avoid hitting Iran's South Pars gas field. More strikes in Tehran, this one said to be part of the Defense Ministry. It comes as Israel's military says it's hit targets at the very heart of the Iranian capital. While communications with the Iranian people are difficult, the BBC's Persian service has managed to hear from some still inside the country.
I think this will be very costly for the Iranian people. Whether Islamic Republic remains or realizes that it's on its last legs, it will increase the cost to the Iranian people as much as possible.
It's becoming increasingly clear that President Trump wants an end to this war of choice. But with the regime in Tehran still intact and the country still able to retaliate to some degree, questions will remain over which of the many war aims have truly been achieved.
It's not clear how real or substantive these talks really are. That will become clearer, I would expect, in the next few days. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has bought himself some time and bought himself some relief on the markets as well. Sophie, Donald Trump is very fond of deadlines. Deadlines at the weekend, deadlines again this week, deadlines over the Russia-Ukraine war. Sophie, he's also very fond of blowing straight through them.
Gary O'Donoghue, thank you. Well, our diplomatic correspondent James Landell is with me. Now, it is really unclear who has actually spoken to who here.
We've heard of the fog of war. We've got that applying to diplomacy here. The president said very explicitly that there were good and productive conversations between the US and Iran. He said his two envoys, Mr. Kushner and Mr. Witkoff, had spoken to what he called a top Iranian official. He said it wasn't the supreme leader, but a lot of speculation he could have been referring to the Speaker of Iran's parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf. But he then went on social media to deny there had been any conversations. And as Gary said in his report, the Iranian Foreign Ministry denied there had been any conversations. But the spokesman did say this. Over the past few days, messages were received through some friendly countries indicating a US request for negotiations aimed at ending the war. And so there's a possibility, I think, now of conversations between intermediaries. There is a big focus on Pakistan. That country's prime minister spoke to Iran's president, Mr. Pezeshkian, today. And on social media, the Pakistan's prime minister said he wanted to play a constructive role in advancing peace in the region. Talks of maybe some kind of conversation in Islamabad next weekend. So look, in this context, in the past, Iran has denied talks when talks have been going on. We have also seen Donald Trump claiming things in negotiations to try and box people in. We're in that sort of space at the moment. Even if there are talks, though, huge differences and issues to resolve.
James, thank you. Well, it has been very hard to establish how many people have been killed in Iran during 3 weeks of war. One US human rights group estimates that at least 1,400 civilians, including 200 children, have died. Iran has not been updating its official death toll figures, and Iranian authorities have threatened and arrested people who have illegally used the internet to send information abroad. Caroline Hawley reports.
With every passing day, the losses grow. Footage of Red Crescent rescuers gives the world one window on what's happening in Iran. But information comes out in fragments because of an internet blackout imposed by the regime. Last week, a rush to get to a woman trapped under the rubble of her own home. All she wants to know is if her daughter's alive. We've already got her out, he replies, trying to reassure. But her only child didn't make it. This is her. 26 years old, the owner of an online clothes shop, Berivan Molani, was killed by falling debris. She died in her bed, according to a friend, in a missile attack aimed at Iran's intelligence minister. Parastesh Dagani was a pharmacist. Her brother said she'd refused to leave Tehran for safety because wounded people and the elderly needed medication. Also known to have been killed, 3-year-old Ilma Bilki, who died a day after being severely injured in an airstrike in western Iran. And this young Red Crescent worker, Hamid Reza Jahanbakhsh. Earlier this month, the headquarters of the Red Crescent had to be evacuated after an airstrike close by. And we verified footage of several health facilities that have been damaged. Among them, Tehran's 17-storey private Gandhi hospital, which has an oncology department and IVF clinic, hit on March the 1st. The same day, panic at the Khatam al-Anbiya hospital, also in the capital. And on March the 3rd, newborn babies had to be evacuated from a hospital in the southern port of Bushehr. The World Health Organization told us it's verified attacks on at least 20 medical facilities and the deaths of 9 healthcare workers.
It's not for us to determine was a strike aimed directly at that facility or was that strike aimed at a facility next to it. It's an attack on health, and the onus is on the people who are pursuing a conflict to actively protect.
But large strikes on regime targets in heavily populated areas have killed ever-growing numbers of civilians, whose stories may never be told. Caroline Hawley, BBC News.
Here, the Prime Minister is holding an emergency COBRA meeting right now to discuss how to handle the economic impact of the conflict on the UK. This afternoon, he told MPs that Britain must be prepared for the war to continue for some time and said they shouldn't fall into the false comfort of thinking there would be a quick and early end to this. Here's our political editor, Chris Mason.
Week 4 of this war and the implications, consequences, questions tumble towards us, tumble towards the Prime Minister. Prices at the pumps now, the potential for costs to spiral in the future. The key question, how long is this all going to go on?
Do you think that households and businesses in our country should be planning for a disruption that actually lasts for months, or do you think that actually this can be concluded in days and weeks, as President Trump seems to suggest?
Hard to answer that question if I'm honest about it, but we've got to plan on the basis that it could go on for some time.
And what about government help with bills, given how expensive universal support was after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine?
Are you considering targeted support this time rather than the universal offer, given just how expensive it was last time?
I'm acutely aware of how much it cost last time round, and I'm acutely aware of the state of the public finances.
People want answers now, Prime Minister.
Yeah, we are looking at what support we can put in, and as soon as we're able to answer the question what exactly that looks like, we will make it clear.
The British warship HMS Dragon has now arrived in the Mediterranean, with critics saying it's embarrassing more kit wasn't sent to the region sooner.
Are you embarrassed?
We pre-deployed quite a lot of assets to the region, just to reassure you. Radar systems were pre-deployed, counter-drone systems were redeployed, F-35 jets were deployed in greater number than were already there.
This smacks of a lack of war-fighting mentality that reaches right across the government, which is what we address in this paper about war-fighting readiness, where we are not at. It smacks of an enormous complacency.
But this smacks of the fact that for years there was underinvestment by the last government and the stripping out and hollowing out of our armed forces.
What more can the government do to support households, Mr Bailey?
Tonight, the Governor of the Bank of England has joined senior ministers for a meeting of the government's Contingencies Committee, COBRA. The economic consequences for us all at the top of the agenda. There is plenty to discuss. So there were those senior figures arriving at that meeting. They are now leaving. That COBRA committee meeting has concluded. The Prime Minister saying today, incidentally, that he was aware of the US-Iran talks going on and he welcomed them. A nod in pointing out that awareness that there is still a dialogue going on with Washington, despite how bumpy it's got between the Prime Minister and the President. And Sir Keir Starmer saying, as he put it, he knows what's going on when some of the barbs are flying in his direction. He reads it as pressure being put upon him, and he said, will not waver. The question now for the government, where might this go? They don't know the answer to that. And if support is needed for people with household bills, who gets that support? The clear implication is it won't be everyone. The government has to work out what is affordable, and if it comes to it, who will get it?
Chris Mason, our political editor. Thank you. I'm joined now by our economics editor, Faisal Islam. So already we've seen a reaction to President Trump's announcement. No attacks for now. Oil prices fallen, stock markets risen, more volatility. But you just don't know how long that's going to last.
Well, it's been an absolutely wild ride in the markets today. They were in most of them across the board: energy, government, bond, the interest rates for lending to government, stock markets. It's a worrying place this morning. Then they hugely rebounded when that news from President Trump arrived. And then they yo-yoed. I mean, you just take the oil price, for example. It went down 14%, up 10%, and then it moved 5% another 4 times today on the various rumours and counter-rumours. How do you plan for this? How do you, what is that communicating to us? Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty about what's actually going to happen. But as Chris pointed to, what the government's trying to do is plan for what happens if this lasts for months and not weeks. And certainly, even if it ended this week, it doesn't look like it is going to definitively end this week, but if it did, you would still have scars from things like the lower production of gas, the damage to the facilities for energy in the Gulf. So there's a lot of uncertainty. Government trying to plan for what would happen if it was prolonged, and the general direction of travel, as Chris says, would be a targeted effort to help with bills if it's required.
Faisal, thank you. Sir Keir Starmer has condemned an arson attack in North London in which 4 ambulances belonging to a Jewish community group were destroyed. Officers say they're treating the incident as an anti-Semitic hate crime. Anti-terror police are leading the investigation. Jewish leaders have described the community as resilient and have said they will not be intimidated. From Golders Green in North London, our special correspondent Lucy Manning reports.
Explosions in the early hours of the morning, attacking a Jewish ambulance service in the grounds of a synagogue in the heart of their community. 4 ambulances on fire as oxygen canisters exploded. CCTV minutes earlier showed 3 hooded men pouring accelerant onto the Hatzalah ambulances in what police called an anti-Semitic hate crime. Flames started to engulf them. Anti-terror police now involved in the hunt for the 3 suspected attackers who targeted the voluntary medical service, who treat Jewish and non-Jewish patients and work alongside the NHS. The synagogue also damaged in the blasts.
We are here at the heart of the Jewish community.
British Jews under attack again. Shaul Iskovitz, one of the dozens in flats next door, evacuated. Emergency services having to break down some doors.
We heard these explosions, a lot of explosions. Yeah, my daughter was quite shaken. She was asking, where's daddy, where's daddy? Yeah, I'm still shaken, to be honest. And no, we don't feel safe, if that's the question. It's quite frightening.
Abigail Levi fled her flat.
I just took my kids. We were all barefoot. I just took the kids and we went out and we saw the big fire. I know what I'm talking about anti-Semitism, because I left France to come to the UK, so I thought it was safer to be here. But apparently, same thing. All over Europe now, it's very dangerous for us.
With daybreak, the damage clear, but the community also steadfast that rising anti-Semitism and attacks will not make them hide away. Police will now investigate a social media post from an Iran-linked group saying it was responsible. It also claimed previous attacks against the Jewish community in Belgium and Amsterdam.
We believe we're looking for 3 suspects at this early stage. While this has not been declared a terrorist incident at this stage, the investigation is now being led by counter-terrorism policing, with all the specialist expertise they bring.
Forensics again outside a synagogue. 2 British Jews killed at Heaton Park Synagogue last year, and other anti-Jewish plots stopped by police.
We see here displayed before our eyes the forces of those who want to destroy life against those who are here to protect life. Nothing will stop us. We won't be intimidated.
The Prime Minister met Jewish community leaders pledging to defeat the poison of anti-Semitism.
This is not just an attack on the Jewish community, but it's an attack on all of us, on everyone who holds the fundamental British values of tolerance and respect.
Burnt out ambulances, broken synagogue windows, fear and anger that Jews still feel unsafe.
Well, the government says it will temporarily replace the ambulances and provide funding for new ones. They are used by people of all faiths and no faith, and a charity campaign has raised in just one day more than £1 million. But while there have been strong words of condemnation and welcome words of comfort, there is fear and anger here that anti-Semitism and hatred has been allowed and has left Jews and the Jewish community still at risk.